Please, babe, it is just me this Christmas. I promise to make it special for us. Come to my house. I really, really need you. Esther sighed as she stared at the message from David, her boyfriend of 2 months. David had been texting her non-stop for days, pleading with her to spend the Christmas with him. The festive season was in full swing, and her social media feed was filled with Christmas decorations, family reunions, and holiday plans. Her friends were already buzzing about what they were doing for Christmas, but Esther was still feeling very conflicted. She had told her mother she would be spending that Christmas with her, but it seems her boyfriend had other plans for them. Esther's mother was a deeply religious woman, and she had been ecstatic about her coming home. As the only child of a widowed mother, Esther's presence meant everything to her during the holidays. She had been praying constantly for Esther's safe return, excited to cook her favorite dishes and spend quality time together. On the other hand, they had only been dating for 2 months, but Esther already felt a deep connection with David. She did not know if she could call the feeling love. All she knew was that she did not want to disappoint him by saying no to his offer. Before Esther could make up her mind about David's message, Folake, her roommate, walked into the room. "What are you doing?" she asked. Esther just looked at her and gestured to her phone. "Oh, are you still thinking about David's invitation?" she asked as she sat on the bed. Esther looked up at her. Folake was her roommate and one of her closest friends. She confided in Folake about the text from David and shared her confliction with her. Folake smiled. "This babe, why are you even hesitating? Do you know how many girls wish they had a boyfriend like David? I mean, he is rich, sweet, and he is crazy about you. Your mom would understand. It's not like you will never see her again," she said. But when Esther still did not look convinced, she said again, "Come on, Esther. You are not a baby. You are in the university now. You have to live your own life. David is offering you the perfect holiday. Trust me, you are going to regret this more if you don't go." But what Esther did not know was that Folake was not really her friend. It all started during their first year of medical school. Folake and Esther had been study partners for a major exam. Folake struggled to keep up, and on the day of the exam, she had begged Esther to give her answers. Esther, on the other hand, was too afraid of getting caught, and she refused. Esther passed the exam, but Folake did not, and she was forced to switch courses. Folake had never forgiven Esther for this. She blamed Esther for ruining her dreams of becoming a medical doctor and had since harbored a deep resentment. When she introduced Esther to David 2 months ago, it was not out of kindness. David, a wealthy young man, had his own dark secrets, and Folake was fully aware of them. Folake was already getting through to Esther, and Esther had begun to change her mind. But now, there was still a problem. Esther could not decide on how to tell her mother that she was not going to be coming home for Christmas any longer. That was when Folake's voice came again. "Just tell her that plans have changed. Say you have an exam or something. It is not strange to have exams during the festive period. I am sure she is going to understand when you tell her that. Before Esther could proceed further with her persuasion, the door opened and Zainab, another one of Esther's friends, walked in. "Oh, so you are teaching her to lie now, is it?" Zainab said, and Folake rolled her eyes. Zainab was a huge hindrance to most of her plans, and she did not like this. She ignored her and continued to persuade Esther. Later that evening, Esther sat on her bed staring at her phone. David sent another message. He was still pleading with her to accept his proposal and spend the Christmas with him. Esther's heart softened at his new message. David had been nothing but kind to her since they started dating. He had showered her with gifts, taken her to fancy restaurants, and always treated her like a queen. She considered Folake's advice one more time and finally made up her mind. She picked up her phone and called her mother. And although her mother was upset about the news at first, when Esther told her that she would be staying back only because of an exam, she decided that it was for the best. "I will continue to pray for you, my daughter. Just focus on your studies and come back home when you have time," she said. With that problem solved, 2 days before Christmas, Esther packed her bags and made her way to David's house. It was her first time visiting him at home, and she was impressed. His house was a luxurious 2-story building in a gated estate, complete with marble floors, expensive furniture, and sparkling decorations. David greeted her at the entrance with pure excitement on his face, and on seeing that expression, Esther was glad she made the decision to spend the Christmas with him. She began to relax, and the guilt she felt for lying to her mom was gone in an instant. She was convinced that David truly loved her, and this period would only do well to bring them even more closer together. What she did not know was that David had other plans for them. They spent every second of that day together, from one activity to the next. When Esther's phone kept ringing with calls from her mother, David decided that it was a disturbance and told her to turn it off. Without a second thought, Esther did as he said. "It's just one day. I'll call her back tomorrow," she thought to herself. David watched her closely, sensing for an opportunity. And when that opportunity came, he took Esther's phone and hid it. On Christmas Eve, David prepared a romantic dinner for Esther. He poured her a glass of wine and encouraged her to drink. This was on the top of the list of Esther's most romantic date ideas, and she was more than happy. She ate the food happily and drank the wine too, emptying the entire bottle. Not long after, Esther started to feel lightheaded, but she brushed it off as tiredness from the day's activities. David watched her closely, a strange glint in his eyes. "How are you feeling, babe?" he said. Esther murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Fine." Before she knew it, her eyelids grew heavy and the room began to spin. His plan was coming together, and it was time to move to the next step, transporting her. In an attempt to place Esther in the back seat, her head accidentally hit the door of the car and she began to regain consciousness, unknown to David, who believed she was still far gone. Meanwhile, Esther's mother could not stop worrying. She had tried calling Esther several times, but her daughter wasn't picking up. It wasn't like Esther to ignore her calls for this long. Her unease was growing with each passing hour. Finally, she decided to call Folake. Hello, Folake. Do you know where Esther is? I have been trying to reach her, but she is not answering. Folake hesitated for a moment. She thought to lie, but before she could say what was on her mind, Zainab overheard the conversation and she grabbed the phone from Folake. Auntie, Esther did not stay back for exams. She went to spend Christmas with her boyfriend David. We have also been trying to reach her, but she is not answering her phone. I think something is wrong. Esther's mother's face changed immediately and her heart sank. She knew what this meant for Esther. Immediately she ended the call. She dropped to her knees and began to pray. Lord, please protect my daughter. Keep her safe from harm. She called a family friend, Mr. Hassan, immediately, who had a tech pro son. Together, they began working on a way to track Esther's phone. When Esther woke up, she was in a moving car. Her hands were tied and her head was pounding. Confused and scared, she tried to move, but her body felt weak. Esther's heart raced. She pretended to be unconscious, hoping to gather her strength and figure out what was happening. David pulled out his phone and made a call. Yes, Baba, I'm on my way. I have the girl with me, he said casually. I'll be there before midnight. Esther's stomach churned as she realized she was in serious danger. She silently prayed, tears streaming down her face. God, please save me, please. Suddenly, as if hearing her pleas, the car jerked, swerving slightly on the road. David cursed under his breath as he tried to regain control. This was Esther's chance. With her hands now free, she quickly grabbed the door handle, swung it open, and leaped out onto the roadside. Pain shot through her body as she hit the ground, but her adrenaline pushed her to her feet. Help! Somebody help me! She screamed as loud as she could, running towards the nearest gathering of people. The commotion caught the attention of passerbys and drivers who began stopping their cars. A crowd quickly formed around Esther as she pointed at David's car, which had pulled over her head. That man kidnapped me. He is trying to kill me, she said with tears streaming down her eyes. David stepped out of the car, his face calm, but his eyes darting around nervously. She is lying, he said, raising his hands in mock innocence. She is my girlfriend. She is just confused. Esther's fear and desperation were evident. Please, don't let him get away, she cried. The crowd began closing in on David, but he suddenly shoved one of them aside and before anyone could stop him, he sped off, disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, Esther's mother sat in the living room with Mr. Hassan and his son Femi. They had been trying to track Esther's phone for hours when suddenly Femi exclaimed, I got it! Her phone is moving. Her mother leaned forward anxiously. Where is she? Can we find her? Femi nodded, pulling up a map. The signal is still active. I will keep tracking it. Don't worry, ma. We'll find her. After escaping, David ran for hours, cursing under his breath. He had been so close to completing his plan, but Esther had ruined everything. He did not realize that in his rush to flee, he still had Esther's phone in his back pocket, transmitting his location to Femi. David pulled into a secluded hotel on the outskirts of the city. He paid for a room in cash, avoiding eye contact with the receptionist. David slammed the door to his room and collapsed onto the bed, his breath heavy. His frustration boiled over as he replayed the night event in his mind. He cursed Esther under his breath for ruining his plans and fumbled for his phone. He called the herbalist immediately. "Baba, there is a problem," he said, his voice laced with panic. The herbalist's voice was calm but stern. "What happened?" "The girl escaped," David admitted, pacing the room. "I had everything planned, but she managed to run away. What do I do now?" The herbalist sighed and reminded David of the rules. If he did not sacrifice a woman before Christmas Day ends, he would lose everything: his wealth, his power, his very life. It would all be gone. David gritted his teeth and swore he would find another girl. The herbalist's voice grew cold. "You had better. Midnight is fast approaching." David hung up and sat on the bed, his mind racing. He opened his contact list and began scrolling. There had to be someone desperate or gullible enough to fall for his charm on such short notice. Back at home, Esther's mother finally got a call from her daughter. Esther's voice was shaky, but hearing it brought tears of relief. Esther's mother thanked God for keeping his daughter safe and asked for a location. Esther broke down in tears, recounting everything that had happened. He was going to kill her, and she could not believe how close he was to doing it. Her mother's heart broke. She could not bear to be upset at the fact that Esther lied. All she could do was thank God for saving her child. "You are safe now, my child. God is with you. We are tracking his location. We won't let him get away." As the night wore on, Femi continued tracking the phone when he suddenly announced that David had stopped moving. "It looks like he is at the hotel," Femi said. Esther's mother alerted the police, providing them with the location. "Please, hurry," she begged. As the hours ticked by, David's options dwindled. Every call he made was met with rejection or suspicion. The women he contacted either did not trust him enough to meet him late at night, or they were too far away to reach in time. David's anxiety reached its peak when the clock struck 11:30 p.m. He knew time was running out. In his desperation, he ventured out of the hotel, hoping to find a woman on the streets who could become his next victim. But his freedom was short-lived. The police, having tracked his phone to the hotel, intercepted him as he attempted to leave. "You are under arrest," one officer said, slapping handcuffs on him. David thrashed and screamed, pleading with the officers to let him go. "You don't understand. I need to leave. Please, let me go." His cries fell on deaf ears as he was dragged back to the police station. But David's ordeal was far from over. Sitting in the police station, David was growing desperate. Midnight was fast approaching, and he knew what that meant. If he doesn't leave, he would lose his life. He screamed at the officers, banging on the cell door. "You have to let me out, please." Once again, his pleas fell on deaf ears. The police had already started their investigations and were uncovering chilling details about his crimes. David had always targeted women who did not have anyone looking for them. It was well calculated in such a way that he carried out his sacrifice without alerting the public. His only mistake was going for Esther, a woman who had her mother's prayers and the Lord backing her. When Christmas morning arrived, David sat in his cell, defeated. He had missed his deadline. His body grew weaker with every passing hour. By the next day, he was found lifeless in his cell. The news spread quickly, shocking everyone who had known him. It was later revealed that David had been performing rituals for years, sacrificing women every 5 years on Christmas to maintain his wealth and status. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Folake had been involved all along. Folake had introduced Esther to David, knowing his true intentions. For years, she had benefited from his wealth, accepting gifts and money in exchange for her silence. When the police confronted her, Folake tried to deny everything, but her guilt was evident. She was expelled from the university and sentenced to prison for her role in David's crimes. Esther returned home to her mother, who embraced her tightly. "God saved you, my child," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Never forget his protection." Esther nodded, vowing to be more cautious about who she trusted in the future. She was grateful to be alive, but the experience had left a lasting impact. This story teaches us to be cautious about who we trust, especially during the festive season, as everyone is in an hurry to make quick money. Not everyone who appears kind has good intentions, and sometimes those closest to you may have the darkest hearts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more amazing stories coming your way.